It's going to take a couple minutes for people to queue up anyway.
Go for it. Okay, we're good.
After we get a couple of shows under our belt, I want to. I'll start promoting it more through my channel.
Yeah, no,
I just kind of
I just
feel
put something
for it.
Yeah, completely. Let's just. This is like.
Because seriously, like once I say, hey, like on a vlog, hey, we're doing this thing, like we might get 200 or 300 people to come, but I don't want it to be like, hey, come do this thing, and they come, and then it's like echoing. Oh, what you saying? There's some kind of glitch or something, and then it's
we are live, fellas. Just so you know,
we are live.
Oh yeah,
we are live.
The other thing is I can never find our channel. I'm always like searching for it, and it never comes up.
I must button my shirt. So,
wait,
how's everybody doing?
I'm doing pretty good. I'm
Yep.
Yeah.
Busy.
No complaints. Life's good. Things are pretty mellow.
Send me a text with the channel link.
Sure. Hang on.
Did you say Ethan or Morgan?
Morgan.
I just heard.
Thanks to PewDiePie and a few other channels, like searching Pew 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 is like.
Yeah, like it does. I think we have to make like a couple videos, and I'll have to retitle this one so that it's like something that people can actually see, and then I think somehow the YouTube search algorithm will help us with that. But yeah, there we go.
All right, cool.
Oh, hey, Sarah's back. All right.
And there's no echo.
I think Sarah's officially our number 1 fan of the show because, you know, she stuck it out through the whole awful sound test. She was in the first episode, so
yeah,
kudos to Sarah.
Did she actually do that?
She did, yeah.
That's impressive. That's impressive.
If I went back and listened to that, and if I had to sit through that, I would have just. I would
have been done. I would have unsubscribed myself.
I would have just closed the channel. Not delete.
But guys, we actually did some preparation. We have a show ready to go today for everybody. There's like a flow of things. We have. I don't know if anybody's noticed the new graphic that we have. Like this is a real deal, legit thing now. I feel like.
It's starting to happen.
Jeremiah's still laughing. He's like, no, it's not. It's still not.
No, it's happening. Maybe.
So, but maybe we should kick into our first segment, which is...
So the show... Well, first, the show theme for today is...
Oh, that's right. The show theme for today is Inaccurate Future.
Yeah. Yes, exactly. And so the first segment is to do an introduction and to kind of tell a little bit about ourselves. So, Morgan?
All right. So I'm Morgan Gold. I live up in northern Vermont. I have a farm. I raise ducks and geese and grow trees. But I also am obsessed with comic books and Harry Potter and various science fiction films. And yeah, that's my deal. How about you, Jeremiah?
Jeremiah.
You're like having a meeting, like, welcome, Morgan. Let me help you deal with your sci-fi
I'm a
issues.
nerd, and I'm pretty proud of it.
Well, I've definitely got a complex because, like, I had to be a closet nerd for so long. Because of when you play sports in high school, you can't be a nerd and play sports. And be cool. You have to choose 2 out of the 3.
Yeah, you sure can't do all of those.
I just went to the closet. I was totally cool and played basketball. But I was like, you know, nerding out the whole time. Like, I would go back from basketball practice and watch Star Trek Voyager. So anyways, my name's Jeremiah. I also have a farm. We call it Roots and Refuge. Most likely the people who are here are people who watch our other channels. So
yes, probably.
I think my favorite sci-fi series has to be the Star Trek universe. I like it more than Star Wars, actually, which is not a popular opinion, but I think it's a superior story. Let's see. I also believe that Star Trek is more likely to come true once science progresses than Star Wars, because the midichlorians is more made up than warp drive. At least warp drive was literally At least warp drive was loosely based around plasma, whereas the Force is literally just like the Force.
Nah, see, but all right, I know we're not getting into a debate, but all right, at some point we got to revisit that one because I would say that Star Wars is significantly more realistic. That
is the Force. The Force is the Force. Like. Whereas, like, Star Trek at least is based in some kind of, like, futuristic science.
Yeah, but Star Trek is, like, everything's perfect and it's great and it's grand. And Star Wars, everything's broken and all the jerks rule the world.
Right.
That's kind of much more the way the world actually works to me.
I don't know.
Different show.
Yeah. You can't just go down rabbit holes the whole time. But no. I appreciate all sci-fi. I really get into also medieval stuff. I'm not just like futuristic science stuff because to me, nerdiness goes to like Lord of the Rings, The Hobbit, those storylines, anything kind of similar to that. Like I like reading. I've read all the Harry Potters, obviously. I really thought the Harry Potter universe was cool. But I really get into, like, when I'm reading, I actually don't read sci-fi books. I read medieval or that kind of, like, genre where there's, like, magic and dragons and, you know, so it's interesting. Like, you know, I've never really read, like, a Star Wars book or, like, a Halo book because I just, honestly, they don't keep my attention. Anyways, this is a tidbit of nerdy information for me.
All right. Well, to introduce myself, my name is Ethan, and we are a homesteading family here in Minnesota. And I am, by occupation, I think the nerdiest one of us. I think that's fair to say. I write software for a living. That's pretty. I mean, all of my coworkers are nerdy. So, yeah. So I love anything having to do with technology. I am definitely a Star Trek, not Star Wars person. I don't dislike Star Wars, but Star Trek, I'm a way bigger fan of Star Trek. And I also love Doctor Who. And I also love a bunch of nerdy books. I'm probably more into nerdy books than I am into nerdy film or TV shows. But anyway, I'm excited to be here. And I think we're ready to get on to the next segment.
All right. And that next segment is I gotta get like a theme song going here. Like that's maybe next episode we'll actually go to this next level, but let's talk nerdy news. So what nerdy news is out there, guys? Because I
thought you said dirty news. I was like, dirty news.
I decided to change it up on you, just a little bit.
I was kind of wondering. I was like, okay, I guess we're talking about dirty news.
Oh, whatever. I don't know. Ethan, you kick us off. This was your idea.
Yeah, so nerdy news. Well, I've kind of talked about this before, but I'm really fascinated with big manufacturing companies kind of starting to manufacture things that have nothing to do with what they normally do. Whether that's like Ford making ventilator parts or these things are really fascinating to me, and that's kind of been a tech side of things lately. I've also heard that Tesla has said that they'll start making basically anything to help out, which I think is really, really cool. I also heard that Tesla had something blow up, and I didn't get to watch the video of that. I don't know if you guys watched that, but they're like in their final testing stages for basically, I think they're working on the big, the big rocket. I don't know what they're calling it these days, but the potential go to Mars rocket. And I guess that blew up. I don't know if you heard about that. Did you hear about that? Yeah. I'm one of these people who I'm not a Musk fanboy, but I'm really interested in what he and his sort of people are doing. How about you guys?
I don't know. I'm not a big Tesla. What was the guy's name that runs?
Elon Musk.
Yeah. I'm not a big Musk fan because honestly, he's really smart and he's a very good businessman, but he's not really the brains behind inventing it. He's just paying everyone to do the good stuff. And so, I think it's really smart, and I think he can do a lot of good things, but, I'm not oh, Elon Musk, you're so amazing, because, he's not the guy actually inventing the stuff. He's just funding it.
Well, that's the thing I struggle with. How much is he, Tony Stark versus how much is he like Bruce Wayne, right? Like,
I think it's more Bruce Wayne. Okay.
Nobody. The thing is that nobody is Tony Stark.
Morgan Freeman or whoever that character was, and gets the technology. Now he's a freaking ninja who you don't want to get into a fight with. So I mean, he's got that going for him. But as far as the tech side, like Tony Stark is literally like developing the arc reactor and putting on a suit and kicking butt. Elon Musk is not that guy. Elon Musk is like, invent something cool. Thanks. And now make me more money and famous. Yeah. Cool.
Well, what's fascinating about him is, like, if you actually go back and look at Elon Musk, he was, like, the nerdiest dude at PayPal, like, part of the PayPal mafia. Like, he was the guy. But then, like, something happened over the last, like, 15 years where he, like, got hair implants and became, like, a suave billionaire that just out of nowhere, which is weird. But, yeah, there was a point when he was the geekiest guy in the room in a room full of a bunch of geeky guys. Like,
well, it sounds like honestly he doesn't know how to accept who he is, because it's like you get a bunch of fame and money and it like completely changes who you are. Like, maybe I'm wrong, but I don't believe anybody sitting at this table, if we became millionaires tomorrow, would really be doing a whole lot different. I mean, Ethan's house may be finished. Like, he'd have up on the walls, but I mean, really, like, I don't really see myself. If I had that happen, I would just be doing more what I'm doing.
I'd probably buy a tractor. That'd probably be my...
like basically, buy my big farm. You know what I'm saying? And get cattle and get horses and buy a better tractor. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's what I would just be doing what I'm doing better. Whereas if you're not comfortable where you literally try and change everything because now you have the opportunity.
I got to be completely honest. If I were a billionaire, not a millionaire, but if I were a billionaire, I would do things totally differently. For example, I would pay like a mariachi band just to follow Jeremiah around in public and randomly show up at places. And he would, for like, pay him a good amount of money for like a year or two to do it. Just so he's like, what is going on? Everywhere I go, there's a mariachi band. I would do stuff like that. So, I mean, I guess I'd do that now if I had the money, but I don't have the money to do that. So,
they only to do that. How expensive can a mariachi band be?
I mean, maybe, let's say you have four of them, you pay them each $50,000 a year. So, I don't know.
I don't know. So, it depends on where you are. Like, if you were in New York, it's probably not hard.
And play music at some person. Yeah.
I'm just saying, I would definitely do that, which right now I can't afford to do, but I would do that.
I was thinking more like, get my education center going and like educate people on how to like revolutionize the food system. And you're like, I'm going to pay a mariachi band to follow Jeremiah around.
You're right.
Thanks, Ethan. And you're like Elon Musk. You know what I'm saying? Like, you're not really helping.
So Jeremiah, I think you stand corrected. Your statement of that none of us would really change, I think you and I probably wouldn't change, but I think Ethan would drastically change.
Totally.
This is why you don't have $1 billion right now.
Jeremiah would be out there saying, what is this, a school for ants? As he's got his little, needs to be at least twice as big as this.
Okay.
All right. Let's keep moving. Let's keep the show moving here, guys. All right. So that's enough nerdy news. What are we talking now?
How accurate are the Simpsons future predictions? So
there you go. You were able to interpret my horrible Photoshop graphic here.
Yep, they were able to make a lot of predictions about the future.
Okay,
which of those predictions were accurate?
I did some research and read up on some stuff, and I basically found 13 predictions in The Simpsons that were accurate. There could be more, but I saw at least that many.
All right, so let's hear them. So let's start.
Okay, let's see. What was one of them? One of the first ones. Why isn't this not letting me scroll? Let me scroll. Sorry, it's not letting me scroll down on my web browser. Probably because of this Skype stuff. Oh, there it goes. There it goes. All right, let's see. Go to the top. It predicted that Siegfried and Roy's tiger would attack them in season 5, episode 10. That was predicted in 1993, and it happened in 2003. It predicted that a program to voice texting, like where you could speak to something and it would like text it out for you or write it out for you.
Wait, was that the one where Nelson's like beat up Martin and then it like said eat up Martha?
It says eat up Martha instead.
Yeah.
Fails. It basically said in 1994 when this technology comes out, it's going to screw it up all the time, and it was right. In 1994, and that came true in 2007. It predicted FaceTime would be a thing in 1995. Came true in 2010. Faulty voter machines. Now that was funny because they predicted that in 2008, and that's when it became a big deal in 2012 when Obama was running, and there was all the faulty machines. So that was funny. Let's see. Let's see. That's not that good. This one I thought was interesting. NSA spying scandal in the Simpsons movie predicted in 2007, which actually came out in 2013.
That's pretty crazy, actually.
Like seriously, like come on, guys. Smartwatches, 1995 came out in 2014. America's Ebola outbreak, 1997, came out in 2014. Actually came true. It said in 1997 that Bart wrote. It says this installment saw Marge offer to read a depressed Bart a book titled "Curious George and the Ebola Virus." Let's see. Greece's debt default predicted in 2012 with 15. That wasn't that much of a prediction. Honestly, the ones that are
the Donald Trump one, right? Didn't they do that?
Down. It says Donald Trump's presidency predicted in 2000 came true in 2016. That was a huge one, though.
He's been talking. Let's be honest, though. He's been talking about running since like 1992 or 91. Donald Trump has been like threatening to run for forever.
Okay, this is crazy. I actually didn't scroll all the way down because I didn't read them all. I didn't have time. But this one is actually fairly impressive. Okay, it says in 1998 they predicted that Disney would take over Fox.
Did they?
Yeah, Disney bought Fox out last year. They own everything.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Oh, weird.
Yeah, it's weird how much Disney owns. Disney owns everything. Like Disney owning Marvel was weird. Disney with Pixar was strange.
Listen to this. Come on, like in 2020, in this episode, season 10, episode 5, it says after a trip to Springfield, director Ron Howard pitches a screenplay that Homer wrote to produce Brian Glazer of 20th Century Fox. At the beginning of the scene, a sign can be seen at the Fox studio lot that reveals the company is now a division of Walt Disney Company. 20 years later, it's true.
That's pretty nuts, actually.
That's crazy.
Maybe they were just hoping. Maybe the cartoonists were like really just jonesing to be a part of Disney. I think like for cartoonists, that's like a big deal. My brother-in-law started out sort of in that world, and I think that's a pretty big deal to work for Disney.
Well, so it's sort of like, I don't know. So I grew up diehard cartoonist kid and comic book kid. And I went to art school for college, and I studied animation in college. And like Disney was like the evil empire. Like, you know, all we wanted to do. Like I was, really? You know, because like if you're like on the alternative side of it, it's like, oh yeah, you don't want to be like a sellout like Disney. You want to be like original and do interesting, different stuff. So I guess it sort of depends on your mindset. But at least kind of when I was doing that, it was sort of like, I don't know. They were like, I mean. Because this was like mid-late 90s, so you've got like, you know, they had just come off the whole Lion King, Little Mermaid, Beauty and the Beast, like blockbuster reign.
Yeah, they kind of died off. I mean, Pixar took over.
Right.
When Pixar and Disney merged together, or when Disney bought Pixar, however that worked out, I thought that was the strangest thing because Pixar was just smacking them around for like a decade. Like Pixar would release hits and Disney couldn't do anything.
Beating you around, you just go and buy them out. So I have a theory about the whole Disney Fox buyout, and you can say I'm wrong, but honestly, like I think it has some merit to it. So Hugh Jackman films Logan, okay, and it's his signature sign off of the character. Basically, does interviews about how it's his last time, all that stuff. And in one of the interviews, one of the big interviews, you can go Google it, it's out there. They say, "Is there any way that you'll play Wolverine again?" And he said in this interview, "I would be willing to play Wolverine again if they could bring Wolverine into the MCU." And they said, "Oh, that's so well." And literally, they say, "Well, I don't think that's going to happen," or whatever they said. Okay, within 6 months is when the first offer came in from that for Disney to buy out Fox. Now, it took a year and a half to get it finalized, but it's almost like Hugh Jackman's like, "Yeah, I'll play Wolverine again if Disney basically owns Wolverine again," which means they'd have to buy Fox and obtain X-Men, and then they did. So,
interesting.
If you see Hugh Jackman put the claws back on, you can be like, "Listen, Disney just spent $66 billion for Wolverine back." So, man.
Yeah, just a money play, basically. That makes sense.
Yeah.
Like Disney has deep pockets compared to basically everybody. So
when all this stuff started happening with there was all that hiccups with Spider-Man.
Yeah, they were going to pull Spider-Man because Sony has the rights. Yeah,
they're gonna pull Spider-Man out. I was like, guys, I'm telling you right now. I was like, don't play with Disney. I was like, Sony. I said, don't play. I said, you mess around and they're going to just buy you out. You'll be freaking Sony Department of Disney. I'm telling you right now, like. It's kind of scary because it's almost like Disney will do what they want. Like that mouse is in control of a lot.
Well, no, I think it's a good point. All right, let's keep moving. We're going to the next topic, which is I don't know what theme that is. It is an inaccurate Back to the Future. That's right.
Yep.
I didn't even have to research this one. There's enough inaccuracies that we could just talk about. Memory. There's no self-tying tennis shoes.
No flying cars.
That's not true. Nike made them just for it. Nike did it.
It was one pair.
I'm just saying they did do it.
That's not the same thing though.
That's saying.
Predicting it being
flying
like a
cars.
Flying cars.
There are no flying cars.
No,
there just aren't any.
No actual hoverboards. Not like what you guys call hoverboards. My kids call. No, that's not it. I'm talking real. No,
there's no real hoverboards that I can just take on my front yard and go. No, they don't exist. But what else doesn't exist? Rehydrating the best pizza, like the little tiny pizzas that turn into the big pizza.
They've made progress in that because freeze dryers are becoming a pretty popular thing, and it's almost the same thing.
Yeah, but it's not that much. You don't take a pizza this big and put it in your little rehydrator, and then it makes a big Pizza Hut pizza.
No, that doesn't work.
You know what? So here's one thing that I found very wrong. Remember when Marty gets fired by a fax? Like, that was, like, their technology. Yeah. They're like, here's a fax. Like, it's like, oh, fax.
Yes.
Yeah, flying cars and self-tying tennis shoes and hoverboards, and you're still
exactly. It's like why would you or even the fact that, like, Marty has the newspaper. Like, they, like, look at the newspaper to see that his, like, kids robbed the bank. And it's like, oh, like, who would read a newspaper for their news? It's just like, hey, look at my phone.
Super valid. Yeah, no faxing.
They didn't predict phones. No. They didn't have, like, personal
they didn't predict cell phones. Star Trek was, like, the first I've ever noticed to predict, like, tablets and that whole thing.
Probably most accurately produce or predicted technology. I think that a lot of people who are fans of Star Trek are actively trying to produce what they saw.
Yeah, I believe that. I mean, every day.
Basically, they're trying to figure out phasers. Like, they're trying to figure out... they figured out basically like Picard's little iPad that Morgan had.
all right. Yeah,
you put a little iPad.
We can change up graphics for that. Hold on. Yeah, no, the Picard iPad. By the way, one last thing before we leave Back to the Future. Did you guys know that Rick and Morty is actually based on Back to the Future?
Yeah.
So all right,
No.
so Rick and Morty is I think is one of the best cartoons out there right now. It's an old scientist who's like a grandfather and his grandson who's kind of an idiot. But if you actually look at them, they were completely designed and based on Doc Brown and Marty. And even think about it, Rick and Morty, Doc and Marty is sort of the intention.
Yeah.
But anyway,
makes sense. One of my closest friends is a comedian and screenwriter in LA, and he always tells me I'm Rick and he's Morty. And I've never watched it, so I don't know if that's a compliment or if he's ripping.
Oh, it's so good.
I never know for sure.
You'd want to be Rick. I think you're always better off being Rick than Morty. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Okay, that's good. I'm happy to hear that because I get told
Rick,
I'm Rick all the time.
Based off of Doc.
What did you say?
And you're saying in that cartoon, Rick is the character based off of Doc from Back to the Future.
I'd much rather be Doc. Yeah, for sure.
But you look like him.
So, thank you. I appreciate it. I'm half his age, but I do appreciate it. No, anyway, there's a handful of other things, though, out of Back to the Future. Like Mr. Fusion. Come on. That's the idea that we'd be able to put some banana peels in a little blender and have a fusion reactor.
There isn't even a Mr. Coffee anymore, let alone a Mr. Fusion, which that was all based on.
No. We are literally right now spending hundreds of billions of dollars in France trying to make one last ditch attempt. The whole world every government is contributing funds to try to make a fusion reactor. I mean, that's where we're at with that. So this idea that it would be open up your little coffee maker, dump your little banana peels in, and you have nuclear energy. That never happened. That was another thing.
It hasn't. But honestly, I'm in my kind of conspiracy theory side of me. I believe that there's a lot more energy technology being suppressed to keep people paying electrical companies and keeping fossil fuels going. There's too much evidence out there as far as for example, switching from carburetors to fuel injection. There's carburetors out there. This is real technology. This is not this actually isn't even conspiracy. There's people who still do it, and as long as they don't try and sell it and patent it, they get left alone. But there's a way where you can air mix water into your fuel system with a carburetor and get 80 and 90 miles to a gallon of unleaded. That's a true thing.
That's a real thing. Perfect segue into the segment after the next segment.
Okay, well, I'm sorry. I'm just saying, there's the whole fusion reactor thing. We'll get back on that. So we got to finish.
I hear you.
All right. So what? All right. So let's ask the question. What did Star Trek actually predict?
Handheld
devices.
Handheld communication devices. So your phone, cell phones, all that. iPad.
Yeah, the police had their little handheld communicator thing they talked into.
Right.
Yeah, that was right. They got holographs totally wrong. There's no holographic anything. They had the Jaws thing coming out of that was wrong. What did they get
You're talking
right?
Back to the Future, Ethan.
We're talking.
Dude, look at the graphic, man. Look at the graphic.
That's Picard.
Star Trek. All right, Star Trek. We're on Star Trek.
So they are not accurate about energy yet. We're not producing the kind of energy that Star Trek's saying that we can.
By the time that they say we are.
Yeah,
they're 100 years.
I honestly believe that we're progressing that direction. I honestly believe
that.
Yeah,
because we're 100. Because the first stories in Star Trek are 100 years from now.
No, they're farther.
It's 300 years, 250.
Yeah, it's 300 years. Yeah.
When we break warp, that's in the 21 something.
I'll have to Google it, but I don't think that's.
I'm pretty sure, right? Okay, I'll look it up.
Well, just look it up. We'll confirm it. It hasn't.
Yeah, I'll look it up.
Well, I know that. I thought Kirk was in the 23s.
Yeah. And then
Picard.
Sure.
Okay, well, so that timeline doesn't match up because right before Kirk is when, like, only like 20 years before Kirk is Archer from Enterprise, and that's like 5 years after we broke the warp barrier. So there can't be that much of a gap. Like when Kirk was first coming into his captaincy, Archer was an admiral, and what's his name, the Zefram Cochrane hadn't died yet. Because Zefram Cochrane was still alive during Enterprise.
No. For Zefram Cochrane?
Yeah. Enterprise took place only a few years after, like 5 or 20 or something like that years after breaking the warp barrier.
Zefram Cochrane lived through the Great World Wars. He was like a kid during the Great World Wars, which were supposed to happen like in our near future in like the 2000 something. Like, so he was, let me look. I'm going to look it up. We'll look it up.
Yeah, just
but I would argue for today's date, they were like right on because they gave enough time. Like they argued that this was all happening well into the future. The things that they've totally gotten right, though, you're right. Like the iPads, they got right.
I feel like Geordi's like visor is like not too far off. Like I feel like that's like if I was gonna pick any invention in Star Trek that we would expect to see in the next decade or two, I would point to Geordi, like a version of Geordi's visor, in terms of blind people being able to have like neural implants that they could see with. Like that feels the most tangible and not that crazy far off from us right now.
Okay, you guys ready? Zefram Cochrane is the first human to create a warp drive system, and in 2063, his successful warp speed flight draws the attention of the Vulcans. So in 2063, that's the first contact. He's a kid during the Great World Wars that basically put all of humanity back into the Stone Age. And he's like this really progressive guy who figures out warp drive. He converts a Minuteman III missile into this rocket warp drive system. And so, but 2063. So it is I was right. It's in the 2000s that he's supposed to have done this.
And Enterprise took place from 2151 to 2161.
Yeah, which makes sense because he's like, that's a long time. Yeah, that all makes sense. Zefram Cochrane was born in 2030.
I don't think that I don't know if we're on pace to have warp drive by 2063. We're 40 something 3 years out.
I feel like see the thing about this is I feel like we could, because the thing that I really like about Star Trek versus other sort of intergalactic, sort of interstellar, even just interstellar, but especially between galaxy travel, is the idea that originally they, like if you go back to the original Star Trek, they talked about warp speed was time warp speed, and they even called it that. So you're creating a time warp. And like as somebody who studied a lot of physics in college, like that's where it starts becoming like more feasible. This idea that you're messing with time itself, like and because that's like if you were to travel through, if you were to bend space enough, you could travel between 2 points. You could basically put a really heavy weight down and pull time and space together and then go between. But time itself would have to basically bend. And so they knew that when they created that. I always really respected that. They got the physics right when they called it a time warp drive.
I think we just jumped down the nerdiest rabbit hole possible.
Just saying, I can go there. I can totally go there.
Warp physics,
but
wow.
I think that we're, like physically it is possible. It's just a matter of doing it. So, like we know the physics is real. Like you could actually do that if you could bend space and time. Okay, that's all I have to say about that.
All right, what else did Star Trek predict? I'm trying to think. Like,
well, I wish replicators were real. That would be so cool.
Replicators are not real.
Holodeck.
But 3D are on that, or in that, going in that direction. Like, I know replicators is far off, but I'm saying it's like a compact. It can produce something. You insert some material. For this case, atom, create something. So like it's a concept. It's a very early concept, but a 3D printer is essentially like a great grandfather.
Right. It only can make. It only can replicate in one material versus a replicator doing multiple materials. Yeah.
Pulling atoms out and rearranging. Now, but the theory, as far as like rearranging atoms and producing something, is doable. We just haven't broken through that threshold.
Yeah. No, I mean,
rearrange molecules all the time, just not like that.
I think you're totally right. Like 3D printing could be the framework for how to create replicators. Though I always wondered, like, they make it seem as though they don't actually have the atoms. So they make it seem as if it's a nuclear reaction where they're actually creating the atoms from nothing. Because if you think about it, like if they were to, for every ounce they have to create in the replicator, they would have to have an ounce of whatever they just created somewhere in those atoms. They never talk about that. At least I've never noticed where they talk about that.
They've never gone in depth with the replicators.
I always picture they like just have all this stuff on hand. And they're like, yeah, Picard always wants like Earl Grey tea. Let's make sure we have some ready to go. He'll press the button and like get it out there real quick. Like they have a hyper microwave. It's done.
Like this many carbon atoms, this many hydrogen atoms. Put them all together.
If you remember the details that they did get right in Enterprise, is that they had a chef on board and they had to stock food.
They also had a Neelix, obviously. On Voyager, they had Neelix, and he was a chef.
Yeah, that's different. See, no, the difference between that is that they were limited on power trying to get home, so they had to have, not because the replicators didn't work, but because they're trying to conserve power. Like, so that makes sense, but like Enterprise had no option. They had to stock food like an old ship.
Yeah, they didn't have the replicators. Yeah.
So replicators are pretty far off.
Paul.
I think that they are on target with phasers, figuring out how to shoot light or energy in a maybe not even a beam form, but some kind of energy weapon. Like a railgun is close, not exact, but it's close. But they are. There's got to be some kind of breakthrough to be able to increase the intensity. I mean, they've already figured out how to shoot lasers to do some stuff, but obviously not enough to like shoot a ship out of the sky. But I'm just saying, like, there could be some development in 100 years that actually produces that.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think you're right. I mean, we're doing it right now. We have the laser guns that are going in Navy ships. I think the main difference is it'll never look like it does. The phasers are very, like, that isn't how it would look, because you would never see the light traveling from one place to the other. It travels at the speed of light.
Right, that's what I'm saying. Like, it would never be like we think. You would just see these ships flying around, and like you wouldn't even see explosions because there's no oxygen for it to explode on. So you would just see like, and all of a sudden the ship would just like fall apart. Like, oh, we won that one. Like, it would be very anticlimactic, but it would be cool.
If you had, but photon torpedoes, on the other hand, if you had like this torpedo that was full of photons, it's a mechanical device that goes through space. It then hits something. When it explodes with photons. Like, that's more realistic. But the actual phasers, you're right. And anytime I see like lasers, because I did some laser stuff at university with lasers, and like you can't actually see the laser unless there's like a mist in the room. Like, you don't see the laser as it's traveling through the air. You see where it starts and you see where it ends.
The medical device that they had, I forget what those, where they'd like wave it over people like for a broken bone or something. That feels like it could happen.
Okay, well, I think it's possible, but there's an MRI is not a medical scanner. Like, we're talking handheld, scan somebody, like identify what's going on. That's not real. Not yet.
Hey, hidden within myself just said this. It's such a good point. The universal translator. Yeah. We basically have that now. We have that right now. Every cell phone is basically a universal translator. That's totally here, if not completely.
Obviously, it doesn't function like it did in the show, where it's like you just hear what they're saying. But I think that's possible. Now that ties back to the Simpsons autocorrect issues, because you can imagine how bad the translator would be at first. It'd be like, it would definitely be messing it up enough that it would be hilarious.
I definitely. That was a really good point. Universal translator, like we're close. Now, I think when you talk about that and saying we're not really there yet, like natural language processing with computers, we're not there yet. And once we get there, I'll be out of a job, because then computers will be able to write software. And then once that happens, I won't have anything to do.
So just convince it, and you'll be.
Don't worry, you'll be already spending all your money to have the mariachi band follow Jeremiah at that point anyway, so it's all good.
Billionaires. Hey, Morgan, I got something special for you, too. So it's not a mariachi band, okay? But it's something special. So when I become a billionaire, I'll have people follow you around as well. I don't want you to feel left out.
Good to know.
Okay?
All right. So beyond talking about Star Trek, we also had another topic that we wanted to talk about the future. And that was weird patents.
Weird
patents.
Oh, yeah. Weird
Jared, this was your idea, man. It's your time to shine.
All right, so the first
you go.
I think you should roll. Is the compact fusion reactor, which is hilarious because Ethan's like, we can't even get fusion right. Well, the U.S. Navy actually had submitted a patent, like I think it's last year, for a literally basketball-sized fusion reactor. Now, the article from Forbes, they're saying that, it's all theoretical and all that, but honestly, just like the technology that was invented 50 years ago that we're just now seeing, there could be something out there that's actually making that possible. Like, I don't know. We'll see as more time moves forward, but that was one interesting one. Honestly, the anti-gravity ship is a real U.S. patent by the U.S. Navy. Basically, it looks like a UFO. And then there's one more that I was like, this is nuts. What's the other one? It was a compact fusion reactor, anti-gravity ship, and what was the other one?
I can't say.
I can't remember the last one. But what did you guys find out?
I am dialing up mine as we speak.
So I know that the thing I think about patents is that, like, I have friends who have patents. I've worked in industries that have patents, and nowhere in the patent process do you have to actually prove that anything you just patented works. So you're really just coming up with an idea and saying, I'm patenting this crazy idea, and then if it works out, then I get to sue you if you try to copy me. So I don't know. I think there are tons of crazy patents out there, and I think some of them might have some validity. When it comes to like actual, like a fusion reactor, I mean, fusion is different than fission significantly in that you have to actually have enough force to push two atoms together till they fuse, right? So I've also heard Skunk Works created one. I mean, they did a press release on that. Lockheed came out. I had a friend who had worked for them years ago. Actually, and say again?
So yeah, I was reading about that when I was reading about this patent, talking about the Skunk Works one. The interesting thing is that the same inventor that works for the Navy also has been working on a room temperature. Well, how did they say it? A room temperature superconductor, and he's also the guy that patented the anti-gravity chip technology.
So the biggest sort of, to me, controversy inside, like, there's a lot of hypothetical top secret who knows things.
Right.
But probably the biggest one for me, like as far as controversial, is why we base our nuclear power on uranium versus thorium. And that's a huge controversy in and of itself. It has to do with the fact that the military uses uranium to build bombs, where thorium is in like everything. But the actual one of the first nuclear reactors that was created in the United States that ran for like 30 years was based on thorium, which is in everything, and it can't melt down. It's a nuclear salt reactor, and it's based on thorium, which is in almost anything. And if it gets too hot, it basically boils out a plug, it all drains out, and there's no nuclear meltdown. Why we're not using that, I don't know. I do know there's a bunch of scientists in the United States who are trying to get us to use thorium reactors. That's, if you want to like a huge sort of conspiracy, that's the biggest one. Why do we not use a proven technology that cannot have fallout? There's no possibility for a nuclear meltdown, which is a thorium nuclear reactor. I don't know why that is, but
you got me, man. You got me.
Morgan's like, I don't know.
Yeah, look, man, I just found this dumb collection of
my brain,
an alarm clock that tips your bed over. Like, that was an invention I saw. Or spring shoes, or rocking chair bath, or comb cap.
I honestly think it's simply because from uranium we create plutonium. We use plutonium, which is not a natural metal, but it's created
that
during.
Can park vertically would be a cool invention.
You did not go and look at anything useful.
I don't know, man. For both of you, I think you would both value a mustache shield. I'm just saying.
Essentially, what I think it all really boils down to, as far as suppressing new technology, is that there's no money, and if you can see this in like the automobile trend, there's no money in anything that lasts a long time. Like, essentially, cars used to be tanks and last a lot longer, whereas now cars are made out of, whether you can call it sustainable materials, whatever. Like, honestly, why have we not made? You're telling me that in the whole life of the automobile that we literally were increasing gas mileage, and then all of a sudden technology just stopped, and now we're basically just leveled off for a couple hundred years, 120 something years or something like that. It's like we literally were like, oh yeah, we're making all these improvements, and all of a sudden it's just like, nope, we'll just keep it right here and we'll never make another improvement. That's called suppression. Like, that's not, like, that's not real. That's keeping the market controlled because they like you paying maintenance people. They like it when your car breaks down. Like, there's a reason why Apple had to settle
the battery thing,
a massive for the battery thing, because they were breaking your iPhone so you could go buy another one. Like, that's true. Like, and you're telling me that if Apple's doing it, no one else is doing it, they're the bad guy? No, I don't think so. That's not how that works.
Well, it's like speaking of Back to the Future, the DeLorean was made from stainless steel and aluminum. Well, none of those rust. They don't break down. That's why you can still go find them today. They're in really great shape, where everything else is rusted up. Why? Well, I think his name was John, right? John DeLorean made them out of a material that wouldn't fall apart on purpose. Well, that's not a good thing to do.
So are they still making DeLoreans right now?
You want to hear a crazy story? The John DeLorean story is pretty nuts. So John DeLorean was like an auto designer. I think he worked for GM at one point, and like one of the big Detroit automakers. And he decided to go off on his own and start his own car company. And he built the DeLorean, and it was like the Tesla of its day in terms of like buzz and interest. And then he got busted with like a whole bunch of cocaine, and like, things went bad for him, and he had all these legal problems. And his argument was that like the Detroit automakers set him up because he was revolutionizing the auto industry. Other people just said he was crazy and paranoid and way into drugs. So, like, I don't know which side you believe, but it's pretty nuts. And I think they were trying to make a movie about his life. It was pretty crazy.
It would be fascinating. That would be a fascinating story. That would be a fascinating story. I do think that with thorium versus uranium, it's simply because of nuclear bombs. They make hydrogen bombs out of plutonium, which comes from uranium fission. So every nuclear power plant in the United States is taking that and refining it and giving it to the military. And so I think that's the only reason. But thorium is completely safe. We could, it ran again for 30 years. I think that was a 5 megawatt reactor or something, not huge, but not tiny, a big reactor or a sizable reactor. And that was somewhere down south, I want to say. That was somewhere down by you, Jeremiah, that they ran that. But he ran that for like 30 years. So it was an experimental thing. And yeah, but there's a ton of stuff out there like that, though. I think there's for sure. I had heard stories of that carburetor that could get 90 miles to the gallon. I heard stories of that when I was a kid.
So many times from so many different sources. It's not a conspiracy. It's a suppressed technology. I guarantee it.
Well, like Tesla had a car that he drove around. He didn't charge it. So even if this was just battery powered, right? Let's take the time frame. We're talking about a long time ago. He had a car that required no inputs. He let the media and everybody watch it for I forget, a month, a few weeks. He drove it around every day, never recharged it, never did anything, and managed to drive this thing around. It didn't make any noise. It didn't require any fossil fuel input. What did it run on? I don't know that anybody actually knows because he destroyed the vehicle after his little press sort of stunt. But there's a lot of things we don't know. Could it have been battery powered? Sure, but then he had batteries that we're just starting to have now. Yeah. Either way, it's fascinating that he did what he did when he did it.
Because there's a lot of suppressed technology as far as the self-sustaining generators. So there's a generator designs that are actually still, because sometimes when things get out on the internet, you can't stop it. And so you could actually still find some loose plans or YouTube videos about it. They don't go too into detail because then it gets flagged and taken down. But there's essentially a generator you can set up that once you give it its initial start, it's a math equation of produce more than what's requiring to keep it going, right? So as it's running and it can produce this much power, it's also recharging the batteries that keeps it going, and it literally just sustains itself.
That's basically a perpetual motion machine. I thought that was physically impossible.
Yeah, it is. I mean, it depends on how you look at it, but then there's a guy who recently created a motor. I forget his name, but he was sort of a mad scientist who created this motor where he basically just shot some sound waves into it's basically a cone. I don't know how else to explain it. But he said this thing is creating thrust from basically sound, which actually I don't know if it was sound. I think it was just I think he was actually just shooting electricity at it. And anyway, he said this thing was creating thrust, but by the physics, you can't create thrust from this. It's impossible to create thrust from what he was doing. And NASA ended up actually replicating his engine and then showing, he was saying, no, it is producing thrust. They replicated this engine and then showed that, yeah, it actually is creating thrust somehow, even though it breaks the laws of physics. The best they can figure is that it's actually somehow interacting with either a different dimension or on a quantum level that we don't understand or something, but it is creating a small amount of thrust. And I don't remember the name of this. I should look that up, but that was just in the last decade here that came out. And I remember when he came out, everyone said, "You're nuts, you're crazy." But he somehow got people at NASA to try to replicate it, and it works. They don't know how it works, but it works. There's a small amount of thrust, but if you're in space, you don't need a lot of thrust, because there's no resistance.
That's what I always thought was interesting about the Star Trek things. It's we've achieved this kind of speed with this kind of energy, and I'm like, you have no resistance. It doesn't seem like it should be that difficult to get moving. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Well, you have no resistance, right?
I'm saying there's no
space. there's no resistance. You're in a vacuum, right? So the only resistance is gravity. But if you're far enough away from planets, there's none of that either. So
how many times did the Enterprise, any of the Enterprises, get stuck in some kind of gravitational field, right? Gravitational pull, gravitational anomaly. There's usually some kind of tachyon particle involved, and the only solution is the warp core.
All right. So on that note, let's go to our recommendations and wrap it up here, gentlemen.
All right.
Okay. I guess I was going to.
Oh yeah. I guess we can do that real quick.
I've got two. I'm kind of disappointed that the Black Widow movie got postponed because of Corona. I was actually looking forward to a new Marvel movie. Like, I really need the universe to kind of pick up a little bit since Endgame. Like, when Tony Stark died, like, a little piece of my heart died with it. So I kind of need them to, like, progress the story. So I'm looking forward to that. But further out than that, and I don't know how bad all this is going to be delayed, the Amazon-produced Lord of the Rings TV show.
That's the one I was so psyched for, too. I know.
That's going to be really cool.
Characters, they're shooting it in New Zealand, which is epic move by them. They're going to be using a lot of the same sets and stuff, and then they set a perfect timeline. It's 3,000 years before Lord of the Rings, so it's a great time with new characters and probably some familiar characters from like the Silmarillion in the books, but not stuff we've seen on camera. You know what I'm saying? Not something that we've seen done. And honestly, it's at a time when the elves were literally like, "Don't mess with me," like. This was before the elves were like, "Oh, we're gonna peacefully go into the river. We're not gonna like we forged this bad sword. Like we kick Sauron's dad's butt. Like we'll kick your butt. Like I can't wait to see what they do with it."
I'm psyched for that too.
Yeah, that's exciting. Yeah, I agree. We're huge Lord of the Rings fans here. Like the whole, just Tolkien, generally speaking, we're big fans of the books. So I've always been let down by we really like the movies and things, but like the fact that Tom Bombadil was never in Lord of the Rings really bothered me.
Not put Tom Bombadil into this freaking movie.
Tom Bombadil was amazing. Like that
he made the freaking ring disappear. Like
he's literally like a demigod. He can do whatever he wants. But I just loved the concept of that he is basically a god, but he's so far beyond everything that he's not a good person to leave this with, because he wouldn't actually necessarily protect it, because like it's like he's past it, you know? So he's not tied into this world really.
Yeah, well,
and I thought that was such
freaking out about the ring, and he's like, "Oh, this little thing," boop, and it's like disappeared. He's like, "No, bring it back," and it's like, boop, now it's back. Like, are you telling me the whole movie could have the whole book could have just ended right then? Oh, ring's gone. Cool, let's go home. Everyone lives.
I loved that character. I loved the concept of this thing that was so powerful that he just really wasn't tied up in sort of human or, little being ephemeral concerns to it. It just didn't really care. And therefore, like, when they tried to send it to him, and then Gandalf was like, he would probably like stow it away in a bookshelf somewhere and forget about it and like not care. And if someone asked him for it, he'd probably give it to him, because anyway, I love that character. But as far as things that are coming out in the future, the one thing that's actually out right now, I haven't had a chance to watch it, that I'm really excited for is I think it's the last season of Man in the High Castle on Amazon Prime, which I haven't had a chance to watch. But the way the last season ended, I was just like, freaking out. So I'm really excited to watch that. I just haven't had a chance. So that's probably my next big one. Obviously, we're watching Picard right now, which is amazing. I think it's the best. I think you're right, Jeremiah. It's the best Star Trek ever. It's so good.
Discovery Season 2. Discovery Season 2 with Pike, Discovery, and a well-done Enterprise, and that freaking fight scene at the season finale, like, that still is better than Picard. Because honestly, the only thing, like, Picard, I predicted Riker. I told my sister 3 episodes before the finale, I said, Riker's going to show up with a fleet of ships. And I was like,
dude! I haven't seen any of this. I haven't seen any of this. No talking.
I basically made a bunch of predictions. True. So it was a little predictive for me, but I still thought it was awesome. But season 2 of Discovery was by far better.
Oh, Jeremiah, man.
I won't like I didn't hear any of it.
Somebody in the comments complained about you mentioning Tony Stark, which I got to say, if you're just finding that out now, that's on you. Like you need to take action. Listen. But the Picard thing was
premature.
A little rushed,
I shouldn't have said anything about Picard. A little too recent. But I'll tell you right now, like, you have a time limit. Like, if something comes out, you've got, let's say, 3 months. If you haven't seen it in 3 months, I don't care if I spoil it for you. That's your fault. You're not actually a fan. Like, so
I feel like you have
Mark is dead a year later. No offense, guys. That's one of those times where you're like, no offense, but you're going to be offensive. Like, get on board. Like, you know what I'm saying? The train left in the station. Like, you need to get caught up. Like, that. I'm sorry. Now, Ethan, I apologize. I thought you said in my mind, I was thinking you finished it. Like, that's my.
No, we are just getting through where they just left Riker's place. So we are just in the first season. We are just getting into it because we don't get to watch a lot.
If you haven't seen Discovery season 2, you should definitely watch that because I think you'd enjoy it.
I had a really hard time getting over the fact that they changed the Klingons. We started watching it, and the fact that the Klingons are like totally different things, I don't know. It's been hard for me so far. But
so mine is something I have never read before, but I'm just about to, and that is Beetle the Bard. So Harry Potter series, right? There's this mythical book or like children's stories that Dumbledore ends up willing to Hermione. Well, I'm finally about to read that, and I'm really excited for that. I don't think it's new. I think it's been around for a while, but yeah. That's on my list.
That's cool.
Okay. Well, also,
as far as recommendations. Oh, yeah, go ahead.
One more thing that we should all be looking forward to, because I saw a comment was like, Star Wars is dead, Disney killed it. Mostly, I agree with you. Okay, as far as cinematic, like in theater stuff, the stuff that they did well. Apparently the public didn't receive well. So like I thought Rogue One and Solo were 2 of their better movies that they produced, whereas the 3 actual like Jedi storylines were mostly just dumb. Like, I didn't really get behind them. I don't care. Like, honestly, if they stricken them from canon, I would be perfectly fine. Like, Rey never existed, Finn, and all that just goes away.
Rogue One is definitely the best movie of the new movies without even, like, a question.
Rogue One was the best one. And in my opinion, the second best one was Solo, which it wasn't that great of a movie, but it was better than the other 3. Okay, so now you've got all this turmoil of the crappy Star Wars movies, and then they freaking do something genius, and they team up with the MCU producers and directors, and they produce The Mandalorian, which is a great success because they're using better people. Like, J.J. Abrams has nothing to do with it, thank goodness. Okay, I say that, I won't spoil The Mandalorian, but The Mandalorian was epic. This is more epic. They have cast an actress to play Ahsoka Tano in season 2 of The Mandalorian. So any real Star Wars fan knows that that's a huge deal. Like, that is going to make season 2 will probably be the most watched like Disney Plus thing that they probably ever put out. Honestly, like I really believe that. Like, season 2 for Star Wars fans for Mandalorian will be huge. Because if they put Ahsoka Tano in it, they're probably going to bring back Ezra Bridger. And if they bring back, I don't know, they could go a lot of different ways. And honestly, they probably will because they have some help. So we'll leave that there. I think there's a lot of potential for The Mandalorian to get even better.
You have me intrigued.
Yeah, no, that one should be good.
We just got access to a friend's. I mean, we just bought Disney for free for a while. So we've been watching some Disney things, and that's on my list. So
yeah,
this will get watched sooner than later. Okay, so do you have a little thing?
I know, there's no little thing. Recommendations, let's go.
Okay, so yeah, recommendations. All right, I'm going to do my recommendation first. Everyone, all 21 people who are watching and the thousands who will be watching after this, you must go buy the Foundation series books. They're the best sci-fi books ever written. Go buy them. It is literally what Elon Musk is, I'm pretty sure, is basing his entire life on, is the Foundation series books by Asimov. Go read them. If I had one recommendation, you will not be let down. There's so many of those books. Read them. They're amazing. Have either of you ever read the Foundation series?
I have not.
Books? Oh, man, they're so good. You have to read them. Have you read Asimov at all, Isaac Asimov?
I, Robot, right? Yeah.
Yeah, he wrote that. He also wrote a bunch of books. He's like maybe the most prolific sci-fi writer ever. I would say he probably is. Yeah, the Foundation series are phenomenal. Basically about an empire in decline, which is his sort of, it's his way, like Starship Troopers was, I can't remember his name, but it was like his way of talking about society. Well, the Foundation series is Asimov's way of talking about society, sort of in current times, as being kind of like Rome in decline. And so it's just, I don't want to ruin any of it, so I'm not going to say any more, but if you were to go read any series of books on my request, it would be the Foundation series. It's an amazing series of books.
All right, I'll go. I'm gonna follow up with another series of books that people should read. So people are probably gonna be like, "This is like 14,000 pages you're telling us to look at," and that is, I just completed finally, after putting it off for years and years, the Dark Tower series by Stephen King. So the Dark Tower and Roll in the Last Gunslinger is this like epic, I think it's like 8 books in total, sort of series talking about this weird world that mashes up the Wild West with like knights and like King Arthur legend and science fiction, like all jammed up together into this whole cohesive story that when you describe it doesn't make any sense, but like if you actually go through the series, it's really, really enjoyable and like really, really interesting. And I actually have come to the conclusion that maybe only behind The Stand that it's like the best Stephen King series there is. Yeah.
Oh, that's such a good book. The
Stand is like one of my 5 favorite books of all time, and so I don't think it's quite as good as The Stand because it's sort of more sprawling, but it's up there. Yeah.
Yeah. I just respect you way more now. Wow, that's such a good book, Morgan. That is, I didn't know you'd like that book, but that is one of my favorite books. That is such a great book, The Stand. Oh, the storytelling in that is phenomenal. Did you ever watch the series that they made in the 90s? Yeah, if you read the book, it was like, it didn't, if you read the book first, it was so. But I think it was on its own, it was pretty good. But yeah, it's hard to read the book and then watch that, I agree.
All right, Jeremiah, what do you got?
Jeremiah.
Well, I don't have a book recommendation, so I ain't got time to read.
Oh, yeah. It can be anything.
I'm like, you're like, book recommendations. I'm like, it has to be a really good book, and I have to be like really like drawn into it for me to read it. So I don't have book recommendations. Honestly, I think if I had to make a recommendation, it would either be watch Discovery, because so many people have been on the fence about it. Like, Picard has a much bigger audience because it has known quantities, whereas Discovery is all new characters and new timelines and new stories. And, but I'm telling you, season 2 really brings home like the essence of what Star Trek, I feel like, what Roddenberry wanted to produce but couldn't. Honestly, that's what I would say, what I feel. And I think they did a very good job in bringing it to the current, like bringing current technology into it without ruining. Does that make sense? Like sometimes, like when they're trying to update something, they like, honestly, like how J.J. Abrams showed like his Enterprise from the movies. Like it was similar, but it was very different than like the original Enterprise, like how it should have been. Whereas the Enterprise and Discovery is like very much a like a current version of like the original, little red nacelle. Mm-hmm. Either that or watch your. I think everyone who enjoys Star Wars and is looking forward to The Mandalorian, you need to watch the Clone Wars. And you need to watch all seasons plus the current one that's out on Disney Plus, because I think that series and Rebels, which are the 2 cartoon series, has more information as far as like what's going on in Star Wars world than anything else that they've done.
Agreed. Yeah.
It really does.
All right, guys, this was a good. I think we'll call this our first show because this felt like a real, actual show versus the awful test that we did last time. Thank you to Alicia, Inconsiderate Joy, Crimson Fry, Doug Jones, Green Range, Little Mountain Life, Sarah Tienez. Seriously, guys, we appreciate you showing up and watching and talking.
I agree with this. The Expanse is a movie off of Amazon Prime. If you like. It has a real, if we were traveling through space, what would it really be like? Because, it's not going to be like Star Trek. Because, all the Star Trek ships are streamlined as if there's wind resistance. They've got skinny discs that grow bigger. And, so everything's kind of like as if you would imagine it was flying. Like, honestly, the Borg cube is really what spaceships should look like because there's no resistance. You can push a Borg cube as fast as you can push anything else.
And it maximizes your space better.
Right. So, the show The Expanse, I feel like it's more accurate to what, if we were going to travel the stars, what it would be like. So it's got, Gauss cannons and rail guns and torpedoes that, have, basically missiles and, stuff like that. It was a pretty good, interesting show. This last season, to me, was, kind of draggy. You know what I'm saying? It wasn't real entertaining, but it's still a pretty good show.
To risk sidelining our closing even more, I will say the first show that I ever watched that got it right was the second version, the reboot version of Battlestar Galactica. When they did spun up their FTL drive, looking at from the physics standpoint, Star Trek had always stretched it out, but that's not how it'd be. It would be a shrinking. It would go to nothing. And that's how it would look. If you were watching something all of a sudden go from nothing to faster than light, it would look like it shrank. And so they were the first to do that, and it's just gone. And it was also when they were using their fighters, they would just sit there and spin completely in a circle. They would be going this way, then they'd be backwards shooting. And I thought, this. And when they did their outside shots, when they're first getting nuked and stuff, there's no noise. There's just these huge explosions, but there's no sound. And that's exactly what it would be like in space because it's obviously vacuum and there is no sound. So, yeah.
I've got some more stuff to talk about. We could talk about Battlestar Galactica, Stargate. I mean, we've got some interesting stuff to talk about.
Yeah, let's talk Stargate next time. I think that'll be a good one. All right, thank you guys. Thank you everybody for joining.
Jason Momoa.
We'll talk to you all very soon.
Jason
we'll be back next week. Thanks.